Welcome to this week's Weekly Quickie. Today's episode is going to be on the hotel series. I'm having a few technical difficulties today, so if I have issues, I apologise. It seems that everything to do with my computer has run out of power, out of batteries, and so my mouse is occasionally working and then not working, and I don't think it's working at all anymore. Oh look, there it goes back. I'm just going to try and get it on the end live video link so that, there it goes again. So that when it's finished I can actually, disconnect at the end of the show. I might just have to shut down my computer to do that. Okay, so this week's topic is the hotel series, of course, which consists of currently 4 books. The first 3 in the series are all around Holly and her story. It's a romance. Starts off as a bit of a reverse romance before it gets into the romancy stuff. So the first 3 books are Henderson, Hi Mel, Cassidy and Holmes. And then the 4th book in the series is one that I actually published years and years ago, and Muse and I have decided that it's actually going to be part of the series because, hey, they work in a hotel. And it'll be in the epilogue of book 4 that we actually connect into the rest of the hotel series. So Best Man, which I published in 2013 now, I think, I can't remember, is the 4th book in the series, and it's going to start another 3 books which will revolve around Jess and her love life. So that's already started up on Radish. If you haven't been reading it, get onto it. I've put the link up in the blurb for this week's live video, and yeah, get into it. It's actually a really good series, I think. So I think others think that too. I mean, it has a pretty big following. I'd say Hotel series probably has one of the biggest followings out of all my books. That and Spectra, I think, are on par with each other. So yeah, okay, let's get into this week's questions. So I am going to warn you straight off that some of these questions will be a spoiler if you have not read the first 3 books of the Hotel series. So you may want to go read those and then come back and watch this video afterwards. Otherwise, here we go. So, why did Ben have to be the bad guy? Well, he pretty much took that role in book 1, and I think he tried to sort of break it, and I don't really see Ben as being the bad guy. He just had different motives for wanting Holly in his life than Sean did. And when it came down to it, Holly had to choose with where her heart was. Now, she cares deeply for Ben. That's not saying that she didn't care deeply for Ben. But after all the experiences of book 1 and book 2 and what happens in the first half of book 3, sometimes walking away from both choices is the way you have to go. But I think at book 3, her last conversation with Ben really clarified why she made the choice that she did. And I think Ben took it pretty well. So I don't think he was a bad guy at all. Now, of course, that doesn't mean he was going to stop trying. He was just being, a man about it. He wasn't going to chuck a hissy and what have you. So I don't see Ben as being the bad guy at all. I don't think he is a bad guy. I just think that he's very orientated around his business and his business interests. And I think that's what it all came down to for Holly as well. Will Ben get a happily ever after? He can have me. I'm sure he can. Look, it is my intention that there will be possibly another 3 books after we finish Jess's story, which will revolve around another character who was in the first 3 books with Holly, Ben and Sean. So I believe that we will see, from what the Muse has been showing me, I believe that we will get to see Ben again. even in Jess's books, I think we're going to get to see Ben. So yeah, he's not going to disappear off the scene. So for all of you Ben fans, just keep watching, and hopefully sometime in the next 10 years I'll give Ben his happily ever after as well. You never know. Will Ben be in one of the new books you were writing? Well, I just answered that one. Yes, he's going to be in one of the new books that I'm writing. So he's still going to be around. Is Ben heartbroken when he finds out that, and this is a spoiler, and I'm actually going to change the question slightly. Is Ben heartbroken when Holly makes the decision at the end of the book 3? Yes, he is. He did care for Holly. He just puts his business above his relationships first and foremost always, which I don't see anything wrong with that. He is a businessman and he's a successful one for a reason. But I think his reasons for wanting Holly in his life sometimes got entangled in his motivations towards his business. And so, yes, he was heartbroken, but I think he was more worried about his business concerns with that. And by Holly negotiating and saying that she would come and consult for him, I think that allayed his issues with that. And so I think his heartbreak wasn't as bad as what it would have been had she not been willing to have anything to do with him or his business going forward, if that makes sense. As we read Best Man, will we see Ethan find the love he denies? Okay. Look, Best Man was my very first reverse romance. And reverse romances to me are where the couple either starts together and, like in Henderson, you get to the end of it and they're not. Or it can be that for whatever reasons, even though the obstacle that they're to overcome, maybe they can't overcome it, or maybe there's something else that's in the way. So my printer's turning itself off in the background, sorry. So I'm not going to say that by the end of Best Man that Ethan will be in love, but I will say that Ethan definitely would like to pursue something more long-term with Holly by the end of Best Man. No, not Holly. Sorry, Jess. The female characters. He's going to hook up with Holly. Ethan is definitely interested in something a lot more long-term. Jess has definitely changed his opinion about women, and the negative one that he was left with after the way his wife behaved. So, yeah, that's everything. Mel, we're going to have to fix this thing where you're commenting as me, because it gets really confusing when I see myself commenting. I don't think this admin thing's working. There must be a way to set it back so that you're yourself when you're commenting. Anyway, okay, so that's all the questions I have for the hotel series. And I do have a few extra questions, so I'm going to answer those now. The first one is, why make Sin's Child private? Now, I'm going to go out on a limb here and think that we're talking about the platform that Sin's Child is currently sitting on. And I've explained once before that the reason Sin's Child is private is because of the fact that there was a lot of issues with plagiarism and stealing of other people's stories on that platform. And the platform wasn't taking any action to protect the interest of the writers. In some cases, if the writers complained about their stories being stolen, the platform was actually deleting the account of the writers rather than taking issue with the people who were plagiarizing. So for that reason, I actually have moved away from using that platform, because I feel it's become a danger to all those who want to professionally pursue writing interests, in the fact that it's just too easy to have your hard work stolen and published elsewhere without you even knowing about it until you go to publish and you get accused of plagiarism. And so my personal experiences on that platform have led me to make the stories that I have left there currently private, and move most of my other stories off the platform and somewhere where I feel that my hard work, my imagination is protected from people who are either ignorant to the fact that you're hurting someone by stealing their work, or people who are malicious in stealing your work and trying to take credit for it. So that's why Sim's Child is private, and it's going to remain so until probably it gets removed. That's just how it's ended up. Sorry. Okay, there's another question here. And this one's all relating, the next lot of questions all relate to Shadow and Light, which is currently on Radish for reading. So, and it's currently free if you want to get up there. It's not going to remain free. So I would suggest starting to read it now rather than waiting for it all to be up there, because at least then you'll get the first lot of so many chapters free. Because as it works now, when the pricing changes to premium, it actually backtracks it so that everything from chapter 4 onwards will be charged. So if you're reading now and you get through those first lot of chapters while it's still free, then it's going to save you Radish coins further down the track, and you'll be able to read the book cheaper. So how many chapters are in Shadow and Light? I actually can't remember. I forgot to prep for my questions today. I was running late and having technical issues, and it just took up time to try and fix, so I didn't get around to prepping. Okay, so when I finished the book originally, there were 38 chapters plus an epilogue. That was the original first draft, 38 chapters plus an epilogue. Now, the next question says, how many extra chapters do you think you will add to Shadow and Light? I actually don't know, because my intention was never to add any extra chapters at all. And then I decided I was going to add an extra chapter from Tynan's point of view very early on in the book, which will actually be the next chapter to go live on Tuesday. And the reason I wanted to do that is because we don't actually get to see what Tynan's life is like before Messina enters it. And I think how his relationships have worked and what he was like before Messina entered his life is really important for the audience to be able to grasp. So I'm writing that extra chapter to go in on Tuesday, hopefully, so that people can get that idea of what he was like before meeting her and before she enters his life. Even though they've met, they've not spoken yet. So, yeah, I want the audience to be able to see what he was like before that and what it was like for him. So that's going to be one extra chapter. Now, before that even happened, I've been going through, and the chapters were quite long in the first draft. And as I've been going through, I've been adding a lot more detail to the chapters. So with the massacre scene, I added a lot more detail into that. The same with when she goes to the garden for the first time for Sanctuary, I've added a lot more detail into that. And that meant that a chapter, what was originally one chapter, so the massacre and the Sanctuary were all originally one chapter, and I've actually split them. So that's already created an extra chapter. And then the chapter that was released on Saturday night and the chapter that's going to be released on Thursday night were again originally one chapter. So that's already been split because I've added so much more extra detail into it, and in rounding out the plot and giving those extra descriptions, it's just really made the chapters a bit bigger, but I think it's made it better. So obviously the people who've read it beforehand and are reading it again now will be the better judge on that, but I think taking that extra time and building those chapters up is making it better. So I'm not going to be able to tell you how many extra chapters I'm going to add, but Usually with my books, it's usually the first couple of chapters that need to be fixed up a bit more, because when I first start writing, it's all about just getting the idea out there. So I just sort of basically spit the ideas out on the page, and then later on, as I get more serious into the books, then I take the time to actually get those descriptions and everything through. So I think the majority of editing will happen in the first part of the book, to do with that world building a lot more and getting those descriptions set up better. Okay. I love all the new parts you have added to Shadow and Light. I also love the butterfly after the smorgasbord. It really takes the anxiety I felt last time away. What inspired you to add that butterfly and do that? Okay, so when I was rereading it, I realised that you only really see Mess interact with the fairy mound at the one point where she gets Sanctuary. And I wanted to put a bit more into that so that you could actually see that she does have a connection to this place, that it existed long before she meets Tynan, and it wasn't just there that one time. I wanted it to be a sort of more common interaction between her and the fairy mound. And so the first change was when she's trying to get away from the massacre and the door appears out of nowhere. That was the first one. So in the original, there was an actual door there that she could see and that she went towards. And I decided to change that so that she was looking for a way out and the fairy mound provided it. And of course, when she does find her way out, she's in basically a maze of corridors. And again, she's got that anxiety and frustration of trying to escape and find somewhere safe to be. Now, originally, she just ran through the corridors in the hopes of getting back to the garage and finding her way out that way. But I decided that I wanted, again, that higher interaction between her and the fairy mound. And so when she asks for a safe place, to find her way to a safe place, the fairy mound produces the butterfly to lead her somewhere safe. So that's why I added the butterfly in, and that's what led to it. I wanted those extra interactions with the fairy mound so that we could see that she has a connection with this place from word go, before she gets taken or anything else like that. Those connections existed for her already. So that's where the butterfly came from. And that's all the questions I've got this week. So I can't remember what I said next week's topic that has. So if you remember, good. But I will be back again next week for whatever topic I've done. The event is already created, so jump into my events page and you'll find it, and it'll tell you what the topic is for next week. Then jump into where it says buy tickets or whatever. That's actually the link to the questions. So jump in there and ask me any questions about the topic, or ask me any questions about Shadow of Light, or about anything else that you'd like to ask me questions about. And I will answer them next Sunday. I don't think I have anything else on next Sunday. School holidays start tomorrow, so it could be messy. But we'll manage, won't we? Yes. Anyway, so thanks for tuning in. Thanks for asking the questions. Hello, Onyx. This is my Onyx here. He's come up to join the party. And yes, I will see you next week. If I can actually disconnect the video, because I don't know if my mouse is working yet again. Oh, look, there it goes. Okay, thanks. Bye.